We're back with Misericorde, Volume 1. This is going to be, I believe, Episode 9. And where we left off right at a very pivotal moment with our player character Sister Hedwig in the Misericorde, the titular Misericorde, for the first time, hanging out, engaging in a little, I wouldn't say debauchery, but bending and breaking the rules a little bit. The Misericorde historically is a place for members of the convent to, within the rules, break the rules. It is the one room where the sisters of the abbey can eat red meat, can openly and freely talk in any way they so choose. Just a place where they can kick back and not have to be so by the book, and I mean that literally, the holy book, bound to the rules of being a nun. And right now, we are about to play a game of chess with Sister Catherine. Music's incredible. I got my tea here. Let's settle in. Anyone want to take me on? Oh, go on then. I was starting to get a little worried that I would never get a chance to corner Catherine, although at the very least her drinking was not slowing down. So, for a little bit of reestablishment of what's going on here, Sister Hedwig received a lead from the farmhand, stable hand that is currently in custody for the murder of the Sister Catherine I, in which he said Catherine with a K would be able to vouch for me. She saw me. I was not wearing the tunic that you found the morning of the murder being discovered, drenched in blood. The boy said I was not wearing it. That's my alibi. Catherine knows. And I was not wearing it. It's not me. However, Catherine does not know that we are currently investigating this murder. And so we have to bring this up in a very sly, sneaky way. And so we're trying to ease our way into the Misericorde and loosely and casually bring up the conversation to see if she can, what word am I looking for? Can corroborate his story. So, luckily, her drinking was not slowing down. We may not get a chance to corner her, however, if we can get her in a chess game, it might be exactly what we need. As long as I could get to her, I was certain I could get what I needed. The issue, at this point, seemed to be getting to her at all. Margaret was pacing about the room, strumming a pleasant tune on her lute. I could see Flora reaching for a book on the corner shelf. However, when she brought it to a chair by the fireplace, she held it over her knee, rather than open it to read. Margaret. With a wicked grin, Flora began to beat the book with her palms. A driving rhythm was created. It was one that Margaret clearly knew, as she immediately returned with a lute melody that fit snugly between Flora's makeshift drum beats. Ooh. Moira ran over to the shelf and retrieved a small wooden flute. As soon as she had an opening, she began to play along with Margaret and Flora. The tune was wild and a little jagged, but it was one everyone in the room seemed to know, save for me, of course. Catherine began swaying back and forth in her seat, and I could see Charity's head moving underneath her hood. Adela, however, was breaking into a full-on dance, jumping and twirling like a madwoman. I must admit, I was stymied. These people were unrecognizable, and I had no idea what to do. There was no way I was going to dance, and I wasn't particularly interested in getting another chess lesson from my betters. To avoid looking foolish, I did the one thing available to me to feel like I belonged in the room. Drink. Oh, I was no stranger to wine. I had it with every meal, even when I was still in Anchorus. But this was a new experience. Nobody in this room was drinking to quench their thirst. They were all drinking for the sake of drinking, chasing a stupor that was expressly discouraged, if not outright forbidden, by texts all of them held sacred. And what was I to do? I was conscious enough to understand that this was not the time to proselytize. I closed my eyes, briefly, to pray that my transgressions would be understood. I was here to seek justice for a murdered woman. I was here to clear an innocent man's name. The songs just kept going and going. It could have been one long shifting song for all I knew. I didn't recognize any of the tunes this makeshift band was playing, but all of them proved popular with the room. I found myself swaying along with the music without thinking. Adela made her way over to me and... well, I suppose the best description I can muster is that she began dancing at me. She got very close to my face. She bumped her hips into mine, almost knocking me over. I held my drink with both hands and held it in front of me like a shield. I had no idea how to dance alone, let alone with a partner. I don't know how to dance. It's easy. You just need to move. I am moving. We were both shouting over the music. Adela laughed and retreated away while still shaking to the beat of Flora's book drum. At the other end of the room, she beckoned to me. I relented, scooting forward, and I honestly can't describe what I did with my legs. I just sort of moved them. Kicked them, perhaps? I would rather not dwell on it. Suffice to say, it was enough to pass for dancing, but not good enough to keep Adela and the band members from giggling at me. These are nice memories. I hope I'm not boring you. The energy of the night decayed, slowly but surely. There had been a steady rotation of sisters between chess games and dancing, but the games of chess were now much less raucous. The dancers, myself included, were now sitting down, and Margaret was the last musician still playing a tune. She stood by the crackling fire, staring into the flames and plucking out a bittersweet tune. Her fingers moved delicately over the strings. The intensity with which she stared into the fireplace gave the impression that she was serenading the flames themselves. That's a really lovely tune. What is it? Thank you. I don't know, really. It's my own. I don't have a name for it. Oh, well, it's beautiful. She turned away from the fireplace and flashed one of her sad smiles at me. I sometimes wonder if I ever had a single earnest exchange while I was outside of this cell. You and I, as we are here, well, this is as honest as it can get for me. I'm free from reinterpreting whatever flickers across your face as your true intent. Speaking face to face is, well, it's like reading a book with words that rearrange themselves. Aren't you going to ask me what it's about? What's about? The song. It doesn't have words, so what could it possibly be about? Margaret smiled again. It still didn't come across as happy exactly, but there was some warmth in her face this time. Of course. How silly of me. I don't understand. I'm the one who doesn't understand. I keep asking you these questions as if you were anyone else. Am I so different? Compared to these women? She tilted her head towards the others, who were all preoccupied in quiet conversations of their own. Very. None of them see the world quite like you do. Well, that makes me sound a little too important. I didn't say you were better than them. And for that matter, I don't think that they are better than you. Everyone here is just, well, different. And you are different in a very interesting way. We speak the same language, but sometimes I feel like I barely understand anyone. Or that nobody understands you. I felt the same way. And I've often wondered, is the onus to change on you or them? Me. That was a quick answer. Well, why should it be anyone else's responsibility? Very noble. But by that same token, why should it be yours? Because I'm new. And I'm more out of place than they are. There are more of you than there are of me, if that makes sense. More people who have lived their lives outside of these little rooms. I couldn't possibly demand everyone start making concessions for me. It's very interesting. When I asked you what the song meant, what was your first reaction? Inside. In your mind, before you spoke. I thought, how can a song with no words mean anything? My response was earnest, I assure you. You're very honest. Does the music make you feel something, though? It's very sad compared to what you were all playing before. You can tell? Oh, that's wonderful. But still, your question is perfectly valid. There are no words, so how could it have any meaning? I came up with this tune when I was feeling rather melancholy. I think the notes match. These notes sound sad to me. I have no idea how I would know that, and even less of an idea of how you might know it. Anyway, it was silly of me to ask, but it does seem like deep down you understood me. That's fascinating, but I don't understand a word of it. She chuckled. Hi, Retro Homebrew. Welcome in, Raiders. Hello. Welcome to Misericorde. This is part of my Sunday Story series here for 2025. We're live reading visual novels in full. So settle in. I'm Capralog. I do first playthroughs of, well, pretty much anything, all randomly chosen through Marbles on Stream. I have a deep focus on game history and appreciation, so settle in, get yourself a cup of tea like I've got here, and enjoy a story. Retro Homebrew, what were you playing tonight? I hope your stream was good. Yo, what's up, hero? A lot of different games. Yeah. Weekdays, I'm playing Bully currently. We just finished up Might and Magic Book 1 Secret of the Inner Sanctum. And when we finish Bully this upcoming week, I have no idea where we're going next. Everything's randomly selected, so stick around. We're going to be rolling marbles. I use Marbles on Stream towards the end of this week. So follow along, be here for that. Come along for the ride and hang out. 2D 8-bit games by Ukrainian developers. That's cool. Game looks it's gorgeous, isn't it? It's absolutely gorgeous. The dithered style with like the hand-drawn portraits all in this sort of grayscale black and white. It is one of the most visually striking games I've maybe ever played. And the way that it reads and feels, especially in a visual novel space, just endears you to the time period and the themes, and using that visual style to connect you to nuns and convent and traditions and just the way that a nun's habit, and I don't mean their day-to-day ritual habits, I mean the actual garb, is all black and white. It's so thematically and contextually and meta-contextually, it just all folds in on itself, and you can't help but just be totally enthralled. If you're interested in catching up, I do have all of the episodes so far on YouTube, So if you're interested in learning more about this story, on YouTube, everything thus far is there. Developed in Bitsy and the Love Engines. Nice. This is a story I really have to lock in and read. So just, again, settle in. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy a little bit of live reading, voice acting, if you will. And thank you so much. Thank you again. This is the sort of thing that Catherine and me used to talk about. Thank you, Hedwig. Is it really? Yeah. I must admit, I'm cribbing from her work a little here. She asked me these questions almost exactly once upon a time. When I was new, I told her about how when I was a little girl, it was the hymns that kept me interested in Mass. Me too. Despite not knowing what any of the lyrics meant, she laughed and said that was proof that God was in the music itself. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I didn't agree. I might still have some complicated thoughts about all of it. But whenever I play music, I think about that. I miss her laugh. She began to pluck a new tune on her instrument. That was one of hers. What I can remember of it, anyway. I wish I could recall the whole thing. I had no idea how to respond to this, and endeavored to move past the evidently raw subject. One forlorn drunkard had been enough for me. Unfortunately, I managed to put my foot in my mouth instead. Margaret? You're from far away, yes? Here we go. Go on. And I may as well be from some place far away. Are we similar in that regard? Do we have a sort of kinship as outsiders? I've lived my whole life in England, Hedwig. As did my father. As did his father. And his mother, for that matter. So, no. Not particularly. She continued to strum her lute, but I could feel a sucking void in between each note. I am sorry. The superior, at that luncheon, I must have misinterpreted. She smiled thinly, with none of the subtle humor her vexatious expressions often betrayed. I could sense that I had tested her patience. The superior has never once asked me about my life. Keep that in mind in case she's told you anything else about me. I must have looked a right fool as I gawped at her and tried to think of something to say, but just then, Hedwig. The sudden intrusion made me jump. I turned around, but I couldn't see where Flora was. Down here. Flora was, sprawled out on the stone floor, her head so close to my foot that I might have tripped had I taken a step to the side. What are you doing on the floor? Convalescing. I feel sick when I stand up, but down here it's good. That makes sense. Are you all right? Yes, this is normal. I think. Catherine said this is normal. I glanced across the room to Catherine, who was sitting at the table looking only slightly more conscious than Flora. If I lay down here for long enough, I'll feel normal again. And then I can have some more wine. Oh, I think there's plenty left. It's a rather big cask. I bet I could fit in it if I drank the rest of what's in there. But I'd go steady now if I were you. I need to ask Hedwig a question. What do you need, Flora? Well, you used to make all of those Bibles, yeah? And well, you know how to make the pictures. Do you mean illuminating? Yeah, that's what I said. Illuminating. Yes, Flora. I did a little illuminating. So. 2 ideas. I have 2 ideas for you. Well, go on then. I can't wait to hear this. Idea number 1. Where's all the gold from that? The gold? The gold from the enumerating. Keep up. You mean the leaf, the gold leaf. Illuminating manuscripts involves a lot of colorful pigments, including gold leaf. I always enjoyed filling in the little details, like halos and jewelry with my little brush. I must admit, though, it wasn't my favorite color to work with. I was partial to the deep blue pigment that I broke out for depictions of certain robes, eyes, and the ocean. Right. Where do we keep all that? I'm not sure. It would get brought to me in these little pots every few months. I think the bishop brought them. Fuck! You mean it's not here? I could feel myself turning hot with embarrassment and shock. Flora's drunken demeanor was already knocking me off keel, and her vulgar outburst set my teeth on edge. I don't think so. Sorry, Flora. Did you want to paint with it? No. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I wanted to steal it. Think about it. We could be rich, and we could have split it half and half. Well, 3 ways. I'd want in on this deal, too. Fuck! Fair's fair, I suppose. That's... Flora, how could you? Hedwig, I don't think you need to take this very seriously. Well, plotting to rob the Abbey, or worse, the diocese itself, this is very serious. You're no fun. It's paint, Flora. What Hedwig means is that the gold isn't worth anything when it's paint. Oh, I knew it was too good to be true. Tough luck. What would you even do with all that gold? If it was really gold. I mean, what do you think? Us 3, we'd get out of this flippin' Abbey. Go someplace far away. She gestured broadly with her hand. I presume to imitate a bird, or the wind, or something. Oh, bless her. Why would we want to do that? Because I hate it here. Tears started welling up in her eyes. I had no idea what to say. Flora, let's get you up. Come on. She extended a hand down to Flora. I followed suit, although I'm not sure I was much help. We dragged the poor girl to her feet and brought her to one of the chairs by the fireplace. She looked positively sodden. I hate it here. So much. There. Surely you don't mean that. Margaret shot me a look, and for the first time ever I could sense true venom behind her eyes. It was the briefest flash of anger, but it was enough to make me feel like a flower looking up at a boot. Why do you hate it here, Flora? There's nothing to do, and I'm all alone. Margaret reached out and clasped her shoulder. You aren't alone, but I understand. I am, though. There's no one my age here. Nobody talks to me. I don't know what I'm doing here. I never wanted to join a convent. She broke down into little hiccuping sobs. Margaret got down on one knee and squeezed Flora's hand in hers. I was too much of a coward to follow suit. All I could do was stand there, stupidly, hoping that some of the immense pity I was feeling would be detectable to Flora and Margaret. I wanted to help, but I had not a single earthly idea what help looked like. You never had a choice, did you, Flora? Flora shook her head. I miss Catherine. I do too. She would talk to me. She was you lot's age, but she at least knew how to listen. She was the only one who felt like a real sister to me. I opened my mouth to point out that sister was merely a title, but I thought better of it. Catherine made time for everyone. I'm sorry if it feels like we haven't made any time for you, Flora. I can try harder. But I like being alone. She started sobbing again. I was bewildered by this contradiction, but Margaret just smiled. I do understand. I really do. Us old fogies aren't much fun to be around, are we? Flora shook her head and Margaret chuckled. We're all you have, I'm afraid. Not if I leave. You can't leave, Flora. None of us can. Our vows are perpetual. They don't have to be. I mean, Hedwig. She pointed at me weakly. Hedwig broke hers, and she was an anchoress or what have you. That was different, Flora. How? I had an answer for this, but I could not share it. Instead, I had to stew in the uncomfortable silence between the three of us. I'm certain that's a more complicated situation, Flora. Well, maybe I could be complicated. I'd be happy telling people it was complicated if they asked how I could leave. There's always other convents you could transfer to one day. You could go to London or to Spain. I'm sure they have a lot more nuns your age in abbeys that aren't here in the middle of nowhere like our boring old place. Remember when Catherine and you were planning that visit to Italy? Yeah. Maybe we can try and put something like that together again for you. I'd just hate to see you break your vows and throw your life away. Would that even be so bad? Yes. The two of them turned to look at me inquisitively. A trace of the same rage that I had sensed earlier flickered behind Margaret's eyes, but I forged onward. Yes. Take it from me, Flora. Don't break your vows. Your life might feel difficult sometimes, but those struggles are nothing compared to the regret you would feel breaking that oath. If the guilt didn't consume you, well, the world would. No man would marry you. No lord would want your service. You'd have nowhere to go but back to the church. And And then you'd be right back where you started, feeling all the same things, with the added yoke of despair that no matter how hard you threw yourself into the work, no matter how much you believed in your vows, this time, well, you'd made that choice. You were once an apostate. That's a millstone that you could never take off. Flora looked ready to burst into tears again. Margaret cast her eyes to the floor. How would you know? Because that's how I feel every day, Flora. Sister Margaret is right. It's my choice was complicated, but I've regretted it every day since, and I will for every waking moment of my life. You don't want to end up like me. Hedwig is right, Flora. Leaving this life, well, it can be very tempting, but there's really nowhere else to go. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it makes me feel any better. I promise I'll do whatever I can to make you feel more at home here. And Hedwig will too. Won't you, Hedwig? Yes. Of course. Thank you. She sniffled and pulled her hand away from Margaret's. She twiddled her thumbs together in her lap and feebly attempted a smile. I guess it's just the wine. I mean, where would I even go? You can still travel the world if you really want to. There's no reason that we can't ask the Superior to send you somewhere nice one day. We just don't want you to throw your life away. Believe me, everyone in this room has been where you are right now. Really? Well, when I was your age, I once tried to escape in the back of a delivery cart. I was gonna hop off in the village and get a boat across the lake. From there, I'd hitchhike to London, marry a wealthy man, maybe a visiting dignitary or something of the sort. I had big ideas. Why didn't you? Margaret grinned. Her eyes were slightly glassy. Well, Catherine had more or less the same conversation with me that we're having with you right now. She begged me to stay. She asked what she could do to convince me. And, well, that's when I said I wanted to play the lute. We all remained silent for a moment. Flora, forgive me, but earlier you said you had 2 ideas. Is there something someone could do? Oh, that. No, it was nothing. Go on, tell us. Well, I was gonna ask if you could teach me what you know about illumination, Hedwig. After all, I'd need some skills if I were to ever leave, wouldn't I? You wanted to steal a bunch of gold paint to fund your life on the run as an artist? Margaret started to giggle. Flora looked affronted at first, but eventually joined in with a quiet chuckle of her own. Shove off. No, I like it. It's better than my plan was. Well, I'm rubbish at drawing, so, well, it's a bit of a non-starter. Hedwig will teach you? Won't you, Hedwig? Margaret's tone was light, but she was looking at me with a grim intensity. Of course I will. I can't promise much. I've only ever worked on illuminated Bibles, but just the basics. That's all I need. That's right. It's good to start somewhere. Catherine taught me about music, and, well, she wasn't exactly Hildegard. Flora stood up from her chair. She was wobbly on her feet, a reminder that she was still very, very drunk as she lurched toward me. She threw her arms around me unannounced, marking the second time this evening that I had no idea how to respond to somebody's touch. Thanks, Hedwig. You're all right. You know that? Well, give the lady some space, Flora. She probably doesn't want to smell your wine breath. Why don't you go eat something? Flora released me from her embrace and gave Margaret a vaguely affirmative hand gesture. She spun around on her heel, still a little unbalanced, and wandered off toward the table. Goodness. I haven't seen anyone get that pissed in a while. Did I say something wrong? I don't think so. I think we did the best we could. Did you mean it? Mean what? About breaking your vows. Do you really feel that way? Oh, yes. There was no sense in walking things backward. Huh. Why'd you do it then? In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have made the same decision. That's why I felt like it was worth telling Flora. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. Well, lovely chatting with you. She picked up her lute from the chair next to the one Flora had been sitting in, and then left to put it back on the shelf. Crumbs! What's gotten into Flora? Catherine had wandered over to our side of the Misericorde, nursing a drink in one hand and resting the other on her hip. Oh, I think she just had a little too much to drink. Too right. I heard her bawling over there and thought to stay out of it, but now she's at the table yammering on and on about cats. How are you faring? Me? Well, well, you having fun? To a degree. We've been consoling Flora. It worked. She's back to being quite irritating. Well, you can thank Hedwig. She's the expert. Oh, did you impart some of your anchor's wisdom? Yes, I suppose I did. It was tough, but it was what Flora needed to hear. Marvelous. I still remember visiting your odd little window and asking all about something or other. You're quite a blunt instrument, if I recall. Was I? I once came to the window to ask what the punishment for breaking a promise was. You were prepared with a whole lecture about how I shouldn't be taking any oaths in the first place. With several citations from Matthew on hand, of course. I'm afraid I don't remember that. Oh, it was years and years ago. Doesn't surprise me. Do you remember any of our questions? You know who asked what? Well, I remember questions, but I don't remember who asked them. And I wouldn't tell anyone even if I did. Good. I mean, not why I was asking, but good. Oh, well then why were you asking? So, how's your first, thingy? Oh, it's been fun. Don't worry about Flora. Someone always cries at one of these. Sometimes more than one person. Oh no. It's her, more often than not. Me? Me? Crying? Oh, absolutely untrue. I have a reputation to maintain around here. Uh-huh. Adela's flipped the table over. Someone started getting weepy. And I'd say you're getting about as rigorous an education in Misericorde etiquette as you possibly could have. It's certainly been a learning experience. But it's been fun, right? We're having fun. Catherine was just as wine-addled as Flora had been, but it was clearly affecting her differently. What's up, Popsicle? Flora had almost seemed like a different girl. Catherine was simply multiplied. Whatever clarity she had been experiencing when we chatted by the fire earlier had been enhanced with this slightly manic energy. I'm having fun. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Good. Because, the Superior would have hanged me if you didn't have a good time. Really? She put you up to this? Oh, good heavens, no. I can just intuit these things. I can just see her bearing down on me because you complained. I didn't complain. I don't complain. To the Superior? That's good. I mean, not that you'd have anything to complain about. Sorry, I wasn't insinuating that you would complain. It's just that, by the way, did you know that cow Angela complained about me to her once? To get back at me. For... I forgot where I was going with this. You're going to sit down and take it easy, I think. Yes! Yes. Thank you, Margaret. Yes, I was. I could sense that my window was closing. Catherine was a very different kind of drunk than Flora, but it seemed like she too was not far off from falling to the floor. Actually, Margaret, could you give us a minute? Of course. She looked a little confused, but she obliged. Love her. Very clever. Isn't she just? Margaret's wonderful. Catherine, I've been meaning to ask you something, and, well, it's very important. If it's about the cat, it's not mine. No, it's not about the cat. And I need to get Eustace or one of those other crafty ones to help me with my door. I'm sorry if it bothers you. Does that door bother you? No, it was now or never. It's James. I spoke to James. He says that you can vouch for him about the night that Catherine II died. Can you? Is that true? Catherine's brow furrowed slowly, and her eyes adjusted in a strange and unexpected manner. It was like I had forcibly sucked the wine out of her somehow. You spoke to James. What did he say? Not much at all. He professed his innocence, though, and he said that you might be able to prove it. Something to do with a traveling cloak. What traveling cloak? The one that Darcy found. I was speaking in a whisper lower than I had known I was capable of. I was terrified that anyone might overhear, but there was no turning back now. Not here. Can't talk about this here. Not with everyone else around. Then when? And where? Everyone turned to look at the door in unison. Are we expecting something? Perhaps Sister Darcy has brought some more food. Moira, who had been sitting closest to the door, stood up to answer it first. She removed the bolt, swung open the door, and... Ah! Moira fell onto her backside and scrambled away from the door on all fours. Everyone else screamed and wailed as soon as they saw what it was at the door. That same hulking figure that had threatened me at the end of the hallway all those nights ago. The cloaked figure lumbered forward, its metal boots thudding against the stone floor. Everyone had made for the back of the room as fast as they could, all yelling at the top of their lungs. I myself felt absolutely petrified, but I could not bring myself to move. I just stood there, assuredly white as a sheet, unable to move. I felt like my heart would give up if I even took one step. That monster took another labored step toward me, and I just stood there dumbstruck as it brought itself before me. A gauntleted hand reached under its cloak, and with a horrible, grinding shriek, it drew its sword. Everyone screamed again. They were practically baying. "Cease,
Your feeble inquiries, Sister Hedwig.
I'm not afraid of you. Could you believe that this was not a lie? Faced with the sword, I felt an odd sense of peace. The glint of the blade in the candlelight, it offered me this noble release from the predicament I found myself in.
Do not force my hand. Cease.
Did you not hear me? I am not afraid.
Then you truly are a fool.
Strike me down then. I'll gladly die in the service to the Lord. I'll gladly give myself in defense of what is right and just. If you'd have me killed for pursuing the truth, then so be it.
Huh?
I could practically hear everyone's head tilting in confusion at once. A musical chord of rustling fabric.
I grow tired of this conversation. Consider this a warning.
Still pointing their sword at me, the figure took a lurching step backward, only to trip on its own cloak. The women, who had been huddled behind me, rushed forward. Adela grabbed the sword that had fallen out of my assailant's hand and held it at their neck. Adela, stop! Remove your disguise, cur, before I cut off your head and remove it myself. The cloaked figure held up their hands defensively. Their hands looked far too small for those bulky gauntlets they wore. I glanced down at their legs and was shocked to see that they were twisted and broken. Your legs! Are you all right? Oh, yeah. Let's make sure the creep's legs are unharmed.
Stop. My legs are all right.
The voice sounded less ragged and imposing now. The figure shifted their weight, and I realized that those big metal boots they'd been wearing had simply come off in the tumble. With a sense of resignation, the monster lifted its hands to the black cloth mask concealing its face and... Eustace? Surprise. If I can do it, she can too, right? That's the beauty of all the voices coming from me. It's all reasonably plausible that other people can manipulate their voices the same way. Eustace, it was you. Yes. Wait a minute. So you're telling me Hedwig's ghost prank, it was actually your prank? That's right. Eustace winced as she pulled herself to her feet. My most elaborate ever. I know you enjoy tormenting people with your practical jokes, but this was a bit much. Hang on. I don't enjoy tormenting people. That was terrifying. I was so confused. And I was dumbfounded. Part of me was relieved to discover that the ghost I had been seeing was not a ghost at all, but, well, the other part of me was feeling something indescribable towards Eustace. Eustace? Why? Well, that's a good question. Mostly because I thought it would be funny. Rather large miscalculation there, I'm afraid. You thought it was funny the first time. I thought it was funny when I thought the character was something that Hedwig made up. Now that I know you actually went and dressed up like a nasty devil and scared her, and now all of us, witless, I'm reevaluating. So was Hedwig right when she told us? Did you really kill a goat? Eustace looked at me with a cold but clearly wounded expression.
No. I think perhaps that Hedwig was so overcome with shock that she saw something in the shadows that wasn't there.
Entirely reasonable, I should think. You were waving a flaming sword around according to her description. That's a point. No fire this time. Or did Hedwig imagine that too?
It seemed like a waste of oil. Not to mention, it's not good for the blade.
Eustace beckoned for Adela to pass her the sword back. Adela's eyes narrowed. Absolutely not!
Come on. I'm the sacrist. I've got to put it back.
I don't think this is behavior befitting of a sacrist. And disrespecting Sister Catherine's sword in this manner. Shameful. We should tell the superior about this.
You're overreacting slightly, I think.
I disagree. Catherine's sword? I was so angry that I couldn't help but blurt this thought out as soon as it entered my head. Did you not know this, Sister Hedwig? I scrambled to say something that would allay any suspicions. I spoke to Angela about what happened to Catherine, and she said that it was the delivery man's sword. Angela thinks she's smarter than she is. Although why would she try and deceive you about that, huh? That I have no idea. So it really was Catherine's.
Well, it certainly wasn't the delivery boy's. Do you know how much a sword costs? Especially one of that size.
So how on earth was it Catherine's?
It wasn't actually hers. She just liked to borrow it from the library.
And you let her?
I refuse to be questioned on this by someone who barely knows me and who didn't know her at all.
You are not in a position to act superior to anybody right now, Eustace. I don't know if we need to tell the soup. But that was not on, Eustace.
Margaret, I know for a fact you and Catherine used to plan and execute far worse.
I'm innocent.
Catherine II.
I think you should calm down, Eustace. I'm sorry that we didn't find your little prank particularly amusing. You threatened to kill poor Hedwig.
I pretended to threaten her.
Oh, well, in that case.
Remind me, Margaret, what happened to the superior before ours?
That was nothing like this, and you know it.
Yes, it was significantly worse.
What are you even talking about? It's nothing. It was before your time. And before Eustace's, for that matter. So she should keep it out of her mouth.
I heard enough about it. Straight from you and her.
Stop making this about me. This is about you and your stupid ghost costume. Waving a sword in Hedwig's face. Honestly, how could you? It beggars belief that you'd even attempt to flip this around on anybody else. Eustace looked around the room, but nobody offered any support. She was breathing heavily and looked as if she were about to cry. Once she was certain that nobody was coming to her rescue, she focused on me.
Hedwig?
I had struck her so hard, my hand stung. Eustace's face was redder than the evening's wine. I realized that I must have scraped her face with my fingernails during the swipe, as there was just a touch of blood on her cheek. I half expected her eyes to start welling up with tears, but She just stood there. Perhaps she was dumbstruck. You're cruel, Eustace. Cruel and nasty. Did you enjoy making me feel small?
Hedwig,
I instinctively raised my hand again, although this time I was held back by several of the women behind me. Easy now. Have you ever said anything earnest to me, Eustace? Have you even spoken to me truthfully, even once?
of course I have.
How can I trust you? Ever? I tried, futilely, to lunge at her again, but I was not strong enough to overcome the several people gripping my arm and shoulders.
I don't know.
I don't like you.
That is fair.
Let's all calm down now, yeah? Yes, I think that's quite enough theater for the night. What's going on? Tonight's outing at the Misericorde has concluded, I think. Boo. Blame Eustace, I suppose. It is getting quite late, though. I'll be getting on. She slunk away from the group and out the door too quickly for me to object. The other women, who had been holding on to me, finally loosened their grips, all except for Moira, who patted me on the shoulder consolingly.
Let's get you to bed, Hedwig.
I nodded, but I kept looking at Eustace. He looked pathetic. She wasn't openly crying, but I swear I heard a sniffle as Moira piloted me past her and out of the room. The others were following suit, muttering to each other in quiet conversation. Once we were out in the hallway, I realized just how stuffy and airless the Misericorde had felt. I took in a breath of fresh air, felt a slight pang of regret, enough to make me turn around to see if Eustace had left the room. Moira tugged me away quickly. I think that's enough for tonight, eh? I don't know. I think I should apologize. Well, you can do that tomorrow. Right now, what I think you need is some rest. I hit her quite hard. As well you should have, if I'm being frank. What a horrible practical joke. There was a slight twinkling sound as her foot collided with the empty tincture bottle I had left on my bed earlier. Oops. Sorry. Oh no, it's my fault. I must have fallen off the bed. What was in it? She shut the door behind her and sat me down on my bed just like she had on my first day out of my cell. Nothing. Anymore, at least. It was something that Darcy gave me earlier. Best to be careful drinking anything Darcy gives you. It was actually rather helpful. She said it would give me confidence. Well, we'll have to tell her it was a rousing success, won't we? We both chuckled. What a day, Yeah, quite a day. I smiled weakly at her for a moment, but I couldn't maintain the charade for long. I burst into tears. Moira made a sympathetic cooing sound and put her hands on my shoulders. I shrugged them off quickly. I'd had quite enough of people attempting to restrain me for one night. Instead, she offered the front of her robe for me to dry my eyes on, which I did accept. There. I think this was all a bit much for you in one go, perhaps. Is it always like this? It feels like the whole Abbey just fell apart. And it's all my fault. Well, this definitely wasn't one of our better nights, but no, I can think of worse. Really? Don't forget that someone died not too long ago. I think that still might top you for having a little bit too much to drink, don't you? Oh, silly me. But even so, we've had some colorful personalities in here. Not the first time we've had a minor clash. But I hit her. I had no idea I was even capable. I'm a freak. I never should have left my cell. Marta's stronger than she looks, you know. She's clapped Flora on the cheek more times than I can count. And I'm sure she'll smack Adela one of these days if they keep arguing about the sherry. Oh. And, well, I think Darcy's gotten into it with Catherine before. Although that might have just been under the influence of a particularly bad mushroom. That doesn't count. Well, the details are different, but I'll be honest with you. I think people mostly remember the boiling over, not really what was in the pot. Still, do you believe that I've gotten slapped a few times? What? Why? She chuckled again and leaned down to give me a kiss on the forehead. So condescending. Now, I'm happy to gossip, but I think I have my right to withhold gossip about myself. Wouldn't you agree? I suppose that makes sense. You can ask Eustace about it, I'm sure. Maybe that's a good way to start mending that bridge. Or you could ask Angela. I'm sure she'd have a particularly dramatic version of it to share. I groaned into her robe. Oh, dear. I have to work with Eustace. We all have to work together, Hedwig. How? In the same room? Oh, it's gonna be horrible. You'll find a way. We always do. She gently tugged her robe away from me. There was an embarrassingly soggy patch on her chest, visible even on the black fabric in the dim moonlight. I'll see you at service tomorrow? Of course. Good. Now get some sleep. You'll feel better in the morning. I promise. She made to leave. When she opened the door, I could hear Angela commenting to her from the landing. It would seem I left just before things got interesting. Yes? Well, there's always next time. She shut the door behind her, and their conversation became too muffled to focus on. I collapsed onto the bed, spread-eagled, and then half-heartedly attempted to get into it properly. I stared at the ceiling, unsure what to do. It was late, but there was absolutely no chance that I was going to fall asleep anytime soon. Something just felt wrong inside me. Despite Moira's assurances that things would continue as usual, I felt as if I had just stepped across a threshold equally as dramatic as the one I had crossed when I left my cell. Eustace's cruel joke had thrown so much of the past few weeks into question, but nonetheless, I felt a bit ill. I rubbed my hand that I had struck her cheek with. I could still feel the sting lingering. She had terrified me, and not just me, but the entire room full of women. And for what? All in the service of some hazing ritual? The superior had warned everyone about that. And I realized she would have only mentioned if it had been a problem prior. I guess perhaps this was typical. Perhaps I was unaccustomed to the space I now occupied, and unprepared for how adversarial and mean-spirited it all was. As it was, there was no denying that over the past few weeks, and well, tonight especially, I had observed a community on the rocks. It wasn't just Eustace and I. It was Angela and Catherine, Adela and Charity, Flora, and, well, everyone else. Those weren't the only conflicts either. All in all, well, it seemed that this place was kind of a nexus of misery and resentment. I was restless. Sighing deeply, I got up off the bed and quietly crept to my door. There was no conversation emanating from any of the rooms or the hallway, and it seemed as if everyone had succeeded where I could not. I did my best to stay silent as I collected a pricket from the mantel and lit the candle in the fireplace, heading out for a stroll.